Welcome to the Winning Wellness Podcast, where we explore health, wellness, performance, and try to improve not only your quantity of life, but your quality of life. I'm your host, Mitch Schwartzman.
Okay. So was at Lindenwood 2013 and 14, interning there, was also working at a physical therapy clinic as a tech, which I feel like that experience was very valuable as well, even though I was just folding towels essentially. But just being able to talk to those therapists and learn a lot from them and the rehab world was huge for me. And then from there, I ended up doing an internship with the St. Louis Blues, which was my first taste of professional sports. And I mean, I learned so much there with that whole staff. I still talk to those guys a ton. They still are a huge resource for me before getting into baseball.
Who was the head coach at that time?
That was Nelson Ayotte.
Yeah, nice.
Nelson's the man. You probably met him, haven't you?
Fortunately, I've been able to meet him a couple of times. I was able to meet with him a couple of times and listen to him speak a few times. He was, for his time here in St. Louis, he was pretty active in the strength conditioning community, whether it was clinics or just coming on campus and talking to the exercise science community. Or I did my time as an intern with the St. Louis Rams. And that helped me get my foot in the door to go visit him over there. And he was very hospitable and stud.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
just a great human.
Yeah.
Can't beat it. Yeah, that was huge. Between him and Ray Barilli, the head athletic trainer, I mean, I took a ton from both of those guys. I still talk about that. I mean, I was just talking about that experience just the other day. Just there's so much that happened in that short amount of time that I still use. It's crazy.
Oh yeah. Those first experiences, they're like formative, I guess would be the term, but as
Yeah.
it fills up your plate with a lot of great fundamentals. And um, you know, I actually here's a quote from Nelson that I picked up from a presentation he did. He said, "If you want a new idea, read an old book." And it's like those, in our minds. And you might have a binder. I don't know if you have a binder from your time in the Blues, but
Oh yeah.
I've got a dusty old binder from the Rams from 2014 or 2010, pardon me. And sometimes you just think what did we do? What were we doing that was working so well? And you just go back and flip through and you dust off some old ideas.
Oh, 100%. And Nelson was so big on that too. I'd see something new and I'd make mention of it, and he'd always talk about this isn't new. This is something I was
Yeah.
doing a while ago that people forgot about. Now we're doing it again. It's just and he's so right. There's so many of those things that, especially in our industry, right? That show up, and then all of a sudden it's not a good idea anymore, and you got to pivot to something else, and then 5 years later we're going back to the same thing because now it's a good idea again. It's just so cyclical. It's funny.
Yeah. So you're working with the Blues, and then where do you go from there?
That's when I got on with the Cardinals.
Nice. And then
Yep.
what was your role? What did your year look like with them?
Yeah, so my first year I was hired on as a minor league strength and conditioning coach. So I worked with the A-ball team in Jupiter, Florida, the Palm Beach Cardinals. So that was their A-ball affiliate. So I ended up working with that team for 2 seasons um, before moving into a minor league coordinator role, which then I basically oversaw all the minor league strength and conditioning, not day to day with any specific team. That was more of a different experience of how do we build a staff and how do we create continuity and curriculum for player development. That was more the focus there. Whereas in my first role, I was more day to day. That was my first experience running like a team day to day in baseball.
And then 2 years as a minor league coach, and then you're in the minor league director, or what do you call it? Coordinator?
Coordinator. Yep.
Coordinator. And how many years as a Cardinals minor league coordinator before you move to the next thing?
4 years. Did that for
Okay.
4.
And then where'd you go from there?
From there, I came to Minnesota, which is where I'm at currently.
And Minnesota, were you in the minor league role, or did you go major league?
Yep. Yeah. So I've been one of our major league strength and conditioning coaches with Minnesota since I've gotten here. So this will be my
Okay.
fourth season in that role.
Okay. All right. And then how big is the strength and conditioning staff?
Oof. We have one of the largest in baseball.
Okay.
Uh, just in Minnesota, there's two of us, me and Chuck Bradway. We have a director of strength and conditioning. We have a minor league coordinator. We have a couple of rehab strength coaches, and then we've got strength coaches at every affiliate in between. So I think our staff is around 15 to 18, somewhere in that range.
Okay. Okay. Nice. All right.
Yeah.
So you're 4 seasons in with the your if it's you and who Chuck, uh,
Yep.
you and Coach Chuck, are you is he ahead and your assistant? Are you co?
Yeah, we do co
Okay.
major league strength coaches. We don't really do like the whole head assistant thing.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
4 years into that and happy they're going good.
Oh yeah, it's phenomenal, man. It's the
Sweet.
best thing I've ever done. Just the importance of having good people around you just cannot be stated enough. And that meant everything to me.
Awesome. Yeah. Those when I was with the Rams, at first I thought that it was awesome because it was the NFL and it was like a big, sexy opportunity or whatever. But as time went on, I was like, wait a second, I just like all the people that are here, and like you kind of learn that it's like it's cool to have like a neat opportunity, a neat position. But what's more important is high quality people around you.
Yeah.
So now that you're, gosh, 10 years into your baseball coaching career, if I was to send this episode to a younger coach who wants to like get to where you are, any like suggestions for him to climb the ranks and find that opportunity?
Yeah. Probably most important thing is just being consistent in everything that you do. I don't see that enough. It's just having consistency, and that's in all aspects of everything that we do in baseball. Like from the players' end to our end, you have to be consistent day to day because we every day is game day for us. Every day is the same day. It's Groundhog's Day.
Yeah,
Having the ability to be consistent in literally everything that you do is just so important because with the interactions that you have with players and coaches and staff, it's like you have to have consistency. You have to be the same person every day, and you can't be a cancer to your culture. So you have to consistently be a good person every day.
yeah.
I think that's the most important thing. If people have that, you can teach almost anything else, but that is the part that's always hard to get out of people.
I'm sure you're crushing that factor. Um,
Trying.
Shifting gears a little bit more of a chalk talk, I guess. When you guys are looking at players, young players, potential candidates for draft or trade, or maybe even guys who are already in, I guess you'd call it in the system. Um, what weight room KPIs do you guys care about?
We look at quite a few. And everything that we look at, the one of the more important things that we do is how do they compare to major league players in whatever it is that we're looking at. Because we're trying to figure out what each player's superpower is. Like what are they good at? What's their carrying tool, if you will? But we look at a bunch of different things, simple things such as body weight, body composition, all the way down to force plate metrics, and all those things. Baseball's so skill oriented that you have to have some level of skill, or none of the weight room things are going to matter. But yeah, with what we do, we use the force plates a lot, and we're always comparing to major league averages, essentially.
Yeah. Anything on the force plate in particular that's scan points, data points? Is it like the Sparta like lotus flow drive? Is it asymmetries? Is it just their jump height? Is it all of those?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a mix of all of it, really,
Okay.
right? Like, yeah, we're looking at asymmetries. We use that a lot for training factors. All the major metrics we're looking at. Jump height we use a lot with the players to get good buy-in and camaraderie there. So that's a big one. A lot of the braking metrics, propulsion metrics, we're looking at a lot of different ones.
So with asymmetries, what interventions do you use for asymmetries?
That's usually we'll use those to adjust our unilateral training, depending on what we see. If we see something that's too skewed one way and it's a concern, because we'll usually pair that with what's their injury history look like. And if you've got a pairing of both of those, that might change the way, either from a volume standpoint that we're doing, or just the exercise itself. Like, does it need to be more knee dominant versus hip dominant type movements? We'll kind of dive into like, why do we see that? Is there a specific joint that's not operating the way that we want it to, and we need to change things, or is it what exactly is it? Is it a force output thing, and we can kind of slide exercise selection one way or another? And it's just also a good tool that we can use to collaborate with sports medicine on this to monitor things on everyone's end to make sure that we're getting what we need to out of a player.
What hardware are you using?
Hawkins.
Yeah,
Hawkins.
okay. Yeah, okay. Same. Nice.
It's, I mean, I got it from Vic. We got the idea from Victor, so
Yeah, nice.
I remember
Awesome.
coming into that lab right there actually and seeing Hawkins for the first time. Victor was showing it to me, so
Yeah, yeah, I'm at Maryville's campus. This is our human performance lab. Had it's a quiet time around here, so I just thought I'd park it in here. And yeah. Um, you talk about maybe the players having superpowers or carrying tools. As a coach, do you have something that you feel like is maybe your carrying tool?
well, that's a good question. Uh, I'd like to think it's consistency. So just as we talked about earlier,
Yeah,
I mean, because that's something I've identified as a trait that coaches need, specifically in what we do.
yeah,
And that's something I've spent a lot of time on trying to make sure that I can have that for
yeah,
players.
yeah. Yeah, I would label that as I'm sometimes tasked with writing out philosophies or sharing things like that, whether it's teaching or coaching philosophies. And I'm not saying that I am great at being consistent, but I value consistency and I hope to one day be good at that or be, have people recognize that I am consistent. So I value it as well. We'll see. Only time will tell. You gotta ask a couple hundred people that I've worked with and see what they say. But yeah, I think that's a good trait to have, and I could see you crushing that as we mentioned. So we've talked about how you got where you are and how you would, so some good straightforward advice for maybe young coaches to get there. What if I am, I have a son, you have a son. I'm sure we'll talk more about kids in a little bit here, but what if we wanted our sons and our sons wanted to be fantastic baseball players? What would you do with them from maybe birth to age 20 or so?
I would not specialize in baseball. I do a lot of different things. Um, Kind of some of the stuff we're already doing now, just playing around in different sports,
Yeah,
getting getting them physically used to solving a lot of problems in a lot of different ways. Can they crawl? Can they tumble? Can they create tension? Can they relax? All those basic fundamental things in a lot of different environments other than baseball. And yeah, if they want to get good at baseball, like, yes, you're going to have to play baseball. If you want to run fast, you have to run fast. If you want to get strong, you're going to have to move some weights. So if you do want to be a good baseball player, you do have to play baseball, obviously. But I would definitely want to be smart about that. I've seen it not go down so smart where you go all in on baseball all the time. I was just talking to somebody earlier today, actually, talking about how they knew someone that plays baseball 50 out of 52 weeks a year. And that's a middle-aged high school. I'm sorry, middle school kid. So it's like
yeah,
that just sounds crazy to me. Um,
agreed. Yeah,
so yeah, there's a smart way to do it, and that's I think kind of what my game plan would be.
yeah. So if I'm a trophy dad or ambitious, maybe it's not negative, but it's positive. Maybe I love baseball and I want my son to love baseball and want baseball. Do I introduce them to it at like what age? And what age do I say, hey man, we did what Coach Rhodes said. We did all the other things, and now it's time to focus on baseball. When do you introduce it, and when do you only do baseball?
I think you introduce it whenever they're interested.
Yeah.
You don't need to force it on them. Like if they're interested at a very young age, that's totally cool. And if they're not interested until much later in life, that's fine too. Probably, middle school, high school, that's when you are going to have to start getting serious about it to continue to play beyond high school. But I don't know that there's really a reason to focus on it any sooner than that. You're going to get more value over being an athlete, and I don't know that you're going to become very athletic just focusing on one thing. You're definitely not going to increase your availability by doing that, and probably setting yourself up for some potential long-term effects by just doing one sport. So it makes a lot of sense to go out, get as much experience early as you can, different sports, different areas, different movement patterns before I don't want to put an age on it. Like I don't want to tell everybody you have to by high school be doing this, but high school feels like it'd be about the right time to really hone in on it. Not to get exposed to it, obviously before that, but that would
And
probably be around the time you'd really start to focus on it.
and then how do you feel? How many how many weeks a year do you want your guys playing, and how many weeks a year do you think that a younger athlete should be involved?
Younger athletes way less than professional athletes, for sure. Um, I mean, our guys are thinking about baseball 52 out of 52 weeks, but yeah, they're not playing 52 weeks a year. We go 6, 7, 8 months, which is a lot. So yeah, younger players definitely do not need to be doing that. Um, Cut it in half. That feels right. 3 to 4 months competitively. And then what are they doing in between? Are they playing basketball, track and field? There's so many other options that you can expose them to different movement patterns to become better athletes. And it just makes a lot of sense that long term it'll improve their baseball gains.
Um, what do you think? Do you think that the guys that you're spending time, because I agree, and I think we're both saying things that are present in the literature and in
Right.
the educated strength and conditioning community. I think that we're agreeing, seeing, and thinking those things, and you're saying those things. Do you think that that is a reflection of the men that you work with on your team?
Like, do I feel that that's a reflection of what they did?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. So you think the teachings that we're hearing now are a reflection of the successful professional athletes that you work with right now.
Yeah,
Okay. All right.
absolutely. A
Um,
lot of successful baseball players have played multiple sports. That's just a fact.
yeah.
Yeah.
Have you had a chance to read through the book Range?
I don't know. I've not read that one.
I believe it's by Epstein, maybe David Epstein. He's a
Okay.
I don't know what to call him. I'll guess I'll call him a sports scientist. He's an author. He's written another book as well. So maybe just to call him an author at this point. But he dives into like specialty cases, like a Tiger Woods, like a Rafael Nadal. Um, and he says that Tiger Woods is not a legendary golfer because he was taught how to golf at age 2 or at age 2 weeks or whatever it was. Um, he's amazing because he's a fantastic golfer despite that. He says that everything that is looked at who's a great athlete, pretty much everybody spends their time developing a wide base and they specialize later on. Yeah, like closer to age 14 and later-ish on. But even then it's not 9 months out of the year, baseball 9 months out of the year. That's how I imagine you get the Tommy Johns and all maybe some fun rotator cuff surgeries and things like that.
Right. Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
so two things, and I guess you can Matt, maybe I'll give you the shorter question first. You mentioned teaching kids how to relax. What do you mean by that?
Can they control their breathing? Can they turn tension off? Just total body tension. We could, we do, it feels like we spend more time turning tension on, which does need to be taught, but then can they also learn to relax? Can,
Yeah,
can they, can they get loose and control their bodies as well?
yeah.
And that's not just for kids. I mean, that's something we work do. So that's a huge concept for me.
Now you've got a 5 and a 7-year-old. Do you broach those topics with them?
Playfully, I do. Yeah. I haven't really, sat down and talked to them about it yet.
Yeah.
To me, the whole weight room experience for my 5 and 7-year-old is what do they want to do? I've not sat them down and said, "Hey, we're going to do this." They see me working out most of the time, and they ask if they can join, and I let them, and then I'll teach them something that they're interested in. And when they don't ask, I'm sure they're not interested in whatever it is that I'm doing, or they'd rather do something else, and I'm cool with that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't actually sat them down and given them any lessons in anything yet.
Okay. Nice. Um, so can you tailspin out? We were just having our own little rap session earlier. Can you maybe like bring up a little bit more about what you're having your young children do and why you think that that will help them long term in whatever sport they pick or don't pick?
Yeah. So they've done a lot of different stuff over the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. We did basketball last year. We've done swimming. We've done tumbling. Um, my daughter does dance. Right now, we've been doing golf. She's huge into golf, and this was her idea. I didn't push it on her for whatever reason. She was like, "Hey, I'd like to learn how to golf." I was like, "Sweet. As soon as we get home, we'll learn how to golf." And we went out to the driving range a couple times. She was interested, so we ended up taking lessons, and she absolutely loves it. I was telling you earlier, like I'm really proud of that. I'm really excited for her with that because golf is just so intense. Like it's just her and me and the instructor there, and she's learning all these new things. And it's so hard to replicate it swing after swing. And seeing her not get frustrated and just learning things and adjusting on the next swing, that was a really cool moment for me as a dad to see her do that because I've never seen her in that element before, and it was so cool to see. So that meant a lot to me.
Yeah, there is something, it's almost eerie when you see these little balls of energy that are constantly either like laughing and sprinting or like shrieking and crying. They're so young. They have all the dramatic swing. It's weird to watch them be still and listen to another adult that's not you. And like it's you're like, I didn't know you could do that. Like,
But that makes all the difference because if it was me trying to teach her that on my own, oh yeah, it would be a totally different experience.
yeah,
It's crazy how that works
yeah.
though.
Nice. Yeah, we're doing something like and it's kind of cool because my kids are interested in the things that I was kind of hoping that they would do these things. So my son wants to be Batman. So we
We're
are.
Spider-Man, so I get it.
Oh, okay. So respect the Peter Parker game. But my son wants to be Batman. So he's into wrestling. He's into Taekwondo. We found good opportunities for both of those. The schedule works. And then we do gymnastics on and off as well. So like we're trying to set that foundation. Now that none of that stuff is going to make him good at golf or basketball or whatever, but it's building that foundation so that he can go do those things later on. So,
Yeah.
or at least that's what the literature says, and that's what a little bit of logic says. So, at some point, we're gonna have to go make him play a sport with a ball. But for now, he's like in his Batman training, and then my daughter does taekwondo and gymnastics and dance. So um, we're we're a,
That's awesome.
we're a dance family too. I'm a dance girl dad, and
Nice.
yeah, it's pretty awesome. You know, you think you go in, you go in ahead of time, you think it's going to be the end of the world or something, and like I love it.
Yeah,
It's so cool.
it's fun to watch. It's impressive.
Yeah.
But no, I'm
Um,
with you. It's important to have those foundations for them, and it's so easy to just skip right by it and not do that. A lot of the stuff like basketball last year, neither one of them wanted to play basketball. But then, you just tell them, hey, this is what we're doing. And halfway through, or actually not even halfway through, like towards as soon as the basketball season started, they loved it. It's like
mhm.
they're too young to know what they like or don't like. So you just expose them to a bunch of stuff, and most of the time, and at least for our kids, it's like they find out that they actually like a lot of these things that originally you tell them about it, and it's like, oh, I don't want to do that. And then by the time they do it, they absolutely love it.
Yeah. Yeah, you fear the unknown. So I think maybe I'm talking more about my children or one of my kids is that that new thing totally disinterested, and then it becomes familiar and it becomes beloved.
Right.
Yeah, and you talk about as we're talking about these foundational sports and the benefits of like building a wide foundation. To quote Dave Tate, he talks about a pyramid is only as high geometrically. A pyramid only goes as high as its base is wide. And as someone, I got in quite a few years of personal training, and I noticed that the 40 and 50-year-olds who were superior physically, they danced or they did gymnastics or they did wrestling early on, with an emphasis on gymnastics and wrestling, because that's going to build a little bit more bone density and a little bit more musculature. But yeah, I mean, it's once again, it's formative, right?
Right. Yep.
What does your training schedule look like for the guys in season, off season? How often are they lifting? What's the emphasis? Are you basing off of KPIs? Can you give us a rundown?
Yeah. Off season is definitely focused on improving KPIs. What is it that each player needs to specifically get better at? Or is there a superpower that we can make more super? What does that look like? They're in general training 5 days a week right now. Um, Usually 3 heavy lift days a week, some speed development sessions mixed in there. Um, Pretty structured. And then you get in season, and I would still say it's pretty structured. It's just different. We take more of like a microdosing approach. The guys come in and they'll do a little bit of something every day. We're still doing focused work on these players need to stay available and what do we need to do to keep their superpowers high. Um, but obviously, the volume and the intensity that they're getting from baseball now is just going to overtake the entire schedule. So then we're going to flip a lot of the things that we do from there.
Will you delve just a little bit more into the in-season microdosing? When you say every day, do you mean 5 days a week, 7 days a week? And are they in there for 90 minutes or 9 minutes?
We yeah, so we keep sessions pretty short. I would say on average, I don't know, 15 to 30 minute sessions, somewhere in there, depending on the player. And I hate saying it because I know everybody says it, but yeah, it does depend. Like we have certain players on the roster that are in bench roles, so they're going to be on a totally different schedule than the guy that's playing shortstop every single day. Starting pitchers are going to look a lot different than relievers. So like there's a lot of different factors that could change it to where all of a sudden their programming looks much different, versus someone that's plays a totally different position or they're just in a different part of their career. A young guy that just got called up to us probably still needs some development work that we're doing with them versus a 10-year veteran in the MLB. Like, how do we keep that guy available so he can perform every single day? Like that's just a totally different thing for us.
Yeah, it depends. Is the
I
it's the
know I hate
sub it's the subtitle to our careers.
I know.
Um,
And everyone says it, so I hate being that guy that just I'm gonna say the same thing, but it's so true.
yeah. Two things. Can you maybe talk a little bit more about like you had like rehab coaches, and then will you talk about the communication with your staff of 18 or so, your communication with your staff, and then how you communicate with athletic trainers over your 26 guys. So I guess there's a few things there.
Okay. Um, so as a strength and conditioning staff, I mean, we have a very large staff. I don't even know exactly how many people we have. It's around 15-ish, I want to say. But we have a director of strength and conditioning. That's Ian Kadish. He's the man. He's great. Have you ever met Ian?
I'm not.
You will at some point. He's the man. He steers our ship as far as our department. Um, from everything we do, major leagues all the way down to the minor leagues and what we're doing in the Dominican Republic to projects we might have going on in Florida. But within that structure, the rehab coaches you were talking about, we do have dedicated like rehab strength and conditioning coaches that work specifically with our players in the organization that are on rehab and are not actively playing. So they'll spend a lot of time on return to play protocols with those players and working directly with longer term rehab players within that whole structure of everyone at every affiliate. But for us specifically, we have a at the major league level in Minnesota, we have a great group of performance staff members, if you will, from physical therapists, athletic trainers, strength and conditioning staff. It's a great group. It really is. We've got a great setup. I think just the location of how we have things at the ballpark is important. We have a shared centralized office for everyone. To me, that's a game changer. Just how do you set up within a structure of where people sit is important. And the fact that we're all together and we can easily communicate with things is huge. Whenever you've got a large staff and you have different people from different departments that need to collaborate, like if they don't have a way to link up naturally daily, it's going to be really tough. And that's when you see the meetings coming into place. Oh, we got to have meetings, or we need to link up at this time because we'll never see you otherwise. We try to avoid that as much as possible to where we can really see each other organically daily and be in the know with each other on what's going on.
Yeah, that's I guess the geography of the offices is huge. Having been a handful of places, it's like the closer the athletic trainers and the strength staff are physically, the better things are for everyone. It's it's as cliche as it depends. Like people
Right.
people who have seen people who have been separated that they versus next door to each other, they get it. So
Yeah.
my favorite setup so far was again back with the Rams 2010. The weight room had these swinging doors that went into the athletic training room, and there's these windows along the wall. You could see what the guys were doing rehab wise, AT rehab and recovery, and everybody in there could see what was going on in the weight room for strength, and it was just it was a beautiful thing. Like if anybody wants me to design a facility, I'm like running that back.
Absolutely. That's the way to do it, man. And that's just so huge. I don't even know that you can really appreciate it until you've seen it both ways. And it's like, why would you ever want to go back from that? It just makes too much sense. It's for the players. It just makes too much sense for them. They get the best care that they can possibly get.
Yeah. It's like having mom and dad in different houses, you gotta if, it's
Right.
like then you can get away with stuff, the communication breaks down. It's just not ideal. um, hey, you're getting to be an old guy now. The career's in the double digits, and what are some things that if you could go back in time as a coach, as a athlete, lifter, pick your poison. What are some of like a handful of things that you would do differently that you've learned along the way that you consider like maybe big rocks or big pillars?
Hmm. I guess as an athlete, I would have probably trained and spent more time trying to be athletic. I spent a lot of time in the bodybuilding realm of things, which was great. That's my foundation of lifting. There's a lot of principles from that I still use, and for me as a coach, it's been phenomenal. But I didn't cut it as an athlete, and I probably spent too much time down that realm and not doing enough things trying to be fast, trying to be explosive. How do you get people to do that is just as much important as anything else. So that those are some things for me personally I would change as an athlete. As a coach, I wish I would have wrote more stuff down. I'm writing stuff down all the time, and I wish I would have wrote even more down. Um, there's so many moments in my life I think back on that like I didn't write things down on, and the specifics of them are fuzzy now. And it's like, man, I wish I could go back and I wish I had all the details on this thing I did, 5, 6, 7 years ago. This would have been sweet to use now. And it's like now I'm just going off memory. And now I tell everyone that, and I try to do it myself. I write everything down. I try to journal at the end of each day of, hey, what did we do today? And that has been so key for me, especially as you have players over multiple seasons to be able to look back at what we did last year or 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And I'm not just talking about having a program for them. Like, yes, obviously we all have a program a player did from last year or something, but more specific things. What else was going on in their life? What else happened in July of 2 years ago with their nutrition when you had a conversation with them about something and then all of a sudden something clicked? If they lose it later, how can we get them back to that? And having as much details as possible is just so important.
What's your structure? Is that a digital notes that you're taking? Are you pen and paper? Uh, and digital, is that just on Google Note, a Google Sheet or
I used to be pen and paper, and I've since upgraded. Uh,
okay,
Now everything's on Apple Notes.
okay.
So that for me is just so much easier to keep organized and to know where everything is. Because I used to do like journals of each year in a hardcover book.
Yeah,
Well, I've got some at the house, I've got some at the office. They're kind of like all over the place. Whereas now it's like, sweet, it's just all on my phone. This is so much
yeah.
easier.
Okay. You know what? The first coach I saw really kind of use a similar system was Pat Ivy at Mizzou. In 2012, I was there for the summer football off season training. Um, he had like 3x5 note cards, and because the way that the summer football goes, you might have like 9 weeks or whatever. Maybe you get the week of Fourth of July off, but you basically have all of your days. You could say day one, and day one, what are we going to do different next year? And he just had all these little notes on there, just like that. Like, it might be like we tried to get food from this place and they screwed up the order. Like, don't get food from that place again, or just little things like that. And when you
Yeah.
when you have a job that's cyclical, well, I guess I'll ask you, how often do you review those notes? How often do you go back in and look at
Yeah,
them?
that's a great question. Um, Another one, it depends on what am I looking at. So I kind of let me tell you the structure of the notes first. That might paint a better picture. But so I've got one set of notes of just general training stuff. Maybe it's something I learned. Maybe it's a conference I went to. Maybe it's just a general principle thing. Like I've got those set of notes, which is separate from like this is what happened each day within my job or within life. And then I try to tease out of the daily stuff each player to where each player has their own folder. So then I can go back and look at, okay, Mitch, what did we do with you yesterday versus this day a year ago? When do I review those? Well, throughout the season for sure. Especially as guys get hot and cold. Especially when guys get hot. I always tell guys like, hey, when you're playing your best, you better take the most amount of notes
Yeah,
because when you're not playing well, we're gonna really want to know what you were doing when you were playing well. So when guys are hot and guys are playing well, I take more notes. I try to get more information on what we were doing, things that they felt was helpful. I told them to do this too, but I do it also, assuming that
yeah,
maybe it doesn't get done, or maybe I can be an extra set of eyes. And then when things go go bad, or you just know when those times are that it's like, all right, we should look at what we were doing a couple months ago when things were going well, or hey, remember when you were playing really well last year? We did these set of things, or hey, do you remember talking about this conversation? We were talking about hydration stuff and how you could do some things differently, and you were really interested in that. Well, this is what we're doing. That was a couple months ago. Where are we at now? Like you just kind of know when those conversations come up, and it's important to have that information of what we did, so that way we can go back and either replicate it or change it versus however it went.
I'm not sure if this is a softball question or complex. What are the guys? What are the common denominators that are helping guys get on hot streaks?
Consistency.
Yeah,
Yep.
yep,
I'm
yep,
sure I could come up with a couple more if I keep thinking on it,
yeah,
but like all the things that come to mind, like that's the theme of whatever it was.
yeah.
What if it was training or a mindset thing or a nutrition thing or a hydration thing, like doesn't matter what that specific thing was, like the consistency of it was the piece that was usually the most important.
What's your age bracket for your 26 guys? What common ages? A couple old
Uh,
guys in there.
yeah, there's a couple, well, we should probably define what old guys is, but usually early 20s to mid 30s. Mid 30s would be mid to late 30s. That's
Yeah,
old guy status.
yeah. And it's now that I've been those ages, it's still kind of tough. It's tough to kind of be consistent in what you do. You can start to create consistency in what how you feel and the things you say, but be consistent in what you do, especially when the world around you is changing. You're living in Florida, then you're in Minnesota, you're at home, then you're on a plane going places. Um, I imagine that is a good challenge, and it might take them 5 or 10 years to learn how to be consistent. And by the time they learn how to do it, they're an old guy.
100%. And sometimes it's not even a matter of teaching someone how to be consistent. It's, hey, how can I help them be consistent? Yeah, you want to educate as much as you can, but at certain points, it's like you have to take over the consistency also for them in some cases.
I I'm not going to remember it, and I probably have it on an email. I have it on an email somewhere. But one of the preschools that we sent my son to, it wasn't a public school. I just reached out and I said, "Hey, what's like your teaching plan? Like, what do you guys do?" And I don't know if the lady was just shoving a book in my face, or if they actually read this book and go through it. But the book, like this, to sum up the book is that children don't have fully developed frontal lobes and adults do. So children are going to be worse at problem solving. They're going to have less emotional stability. And so when they're having meltdowns and breakdowns, we have to lend them our frontal lobe. And that actually kind of shifted my gears a little bit. Like I've always been into teaching my athletes like about sleep or hydration or nutrition or stress management or whatever. I've always been into teaching that, but that really kind of helped me like polish the thought is that I just want my younger athletes to know the things that I, as an older coach, believe in. And if I can get them to care about it and to make a little bit of headway on that, like to put my older thoughts and experiences from this head into their good young bodies, that'd be like the dream.
Yeah, I agree.
What do you see any changes coming up for you with what you guys are doing in the weight room, or changes in the strength conditioning community?
Um, no, not really. A lot of it for us is refining what we do. How can we get savagely good at all the things that we do? Um, within the S&C community, I'm very interested to see where it goes over the next 5, 10 years. Um, with with the way the programs are being structured now and the accreditation process, it'll be interesting to follow and see where strength and conditioning goes. I'm very interested in seeing where it goes.
Yeah.
Seems like the process is changing.
Yeah. And you were telling me earlier that you're you're doing like buku Zoom calls with your players as they're scattered around the country, maybe around the world a little bit. Do you see yourself becoming an online personal training fitness coach?
Absolutely not. I hope not.
Hey, you never know. Um, I got a few things here. You and I have talked about a doohickey kind of like this
Ah,
before.
yes. Yes.
I forget how we ended up talking about grip, and I forget some of the details on it. But I do recall you saying that you guys measure grip,
Yep.
and that you guys also do some. Grip is the flexion of the finger, the hand, often the wrist. And you and I had a little conversation about extension and working that extension. And this is something I just carry around with me, and I pull it on my pack on a regular basis. Can you talk a little about maybe like the air quotes experiment that you guys have kind of run with the like putting more balance into guys' arms and the benefits that you saw or didn't see?
Yeah, that's cool that you had that little doohickey queued up there.
Oh,
Um,
stay ready.
yeah, definitely. I mean, there's definitely a value in grip work other than just flexion, like extension of the fingers, um, supination, pronation, ulnar deviation, like all those things are huge factors in improving grip. And obviously, flexion is the most popular one within the industry or within the grip space. But yeah, definitely value in improving grip strength with all the other movements, and that's should be a part of a well-rounded grip program.
So, do you guys use something like this, identical to this?
No, I don't even
Um,
know. We've been playing with basically a doohickey similar to that.
yeah.
I couldn't even tell you what the brand name was. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little rubber guy that you can just put on your hand, and
Yeah.
um, a lot of those things guys will do just kind of throughout the day, kind of like what you're saying. It's not even necessarily like a formal part of a training program, but just something that guys will play around with on their own. Our guys are always looking for edges. How can they get better? Things that they can work on. That to me is a simple thing you can just kind of throw in while you're watching a baseball game and work on some stuff.
Yeah. And then I think, am I remembering correctly? You said that when you guys played around with like maybe like cueing them to spend more time with this stuff, that their grip strength actually improved.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So, everything else we train, everything else you wouldn't do, all your squat patterns without some hinge patterns. You wouldn't do only chest without doing some back, but we only grip and flex. And so extending, I purchased those. They're dirt cheap, by the way, like under $15 for like a few of them. But I did something several years ago where I did like a landscaping project in the backyard, and just a bunch of manual labor, like laying rock, like digging up tree roots, like all this other stuff. But the way I did it is I did it in like almost like I tried to make it like a romantic gesture that my wife was out of town and I just busted my hump, like 30 hours of work in like the 2 days she was gone. Like just one of the craziest like manual labor work sessions I've ever done in my life. And after doing that, I did like 2 big weekends on it that summer. And after doing it, I'd wake up in the morning, my hand would be constrict a little bit, and I'd have like a little bit of like grip pain. And I stopped doing grip work because I was under the impression that I had like flared up like almost like an arthritis because the pain, and I'd wake up in the morning and it'd be so tight or whatever. I stopped doing grip work for a few years, only to find out that I had just created this crazy patch of tightness in my lower forearm. It was all flexion. When I started playing around with more flexing, extending, and direct like massage, and that opened up, and I started playing around with this, my hand went completely back to normal and neutral. I was able to go back to like grabbing heavy things and doing normal lifting. It was like I never had that issue, but it was a few years of waking up in the morning with like this weird tightness and just not getting it to go away until I invested time into massaging that and playing around with one of these. So I have a feeling that that's going to be for me. Um, that's gonna be like almost like a longevity hack for just staying healthy. And I don't know if it helps anybody out there, but I'm just a huge fan of the extension principle. I've been brainstorming. We all know how to measure grip strength. I wanted to create something for extension. I haven't quite come up with my idea, my philosophy yet. I thought it was going to be, how we do like plate pinch holds.
Yep.
I thought it was going to be to stick your fingers in the center of the plate and see how long you could hold like a 10 or 25-pound plate. But that goes down the toilet because some guys' fingers, I was playing around with it with my staff and some athletes. Some guys' fingers aren't just straight, but they actually bow and hyperextend. And so
Right,
and
right,
so like so I gave it like I was doing it and I had a couple other guys do it and they're like, "Oh, this is tough. Like this could be good. Like you can really see like how good you are at extension." And then the next guy does it and he's like, "This is a waste of time. Like, why is this tough?" And we're all like freaking out about how good he is at it. And then he takes his hand out and his fingers all hyperextend. So,
right.
um, it's the project is still on the chopping block as to how we can measure some extension. But
That's really cool. You have to keep me updated on that.
yeah, it's
Sure. Yeah,
we'll
that's a
we'll
really cool idea.
yeah, we'll see what happens. But
I'm with
so
you. It could be a game changer for certain guys. I'll backtrack a little bit too because, like, for me and what I've seen, the number one key to improving grip strength is just to do more hand-loaded stuff in general. Sometimes you get these guys and all they've done is work with the barbell and machines, and it's like they've not even done a lot of hand-loaded stuff, period, with kettlebells, dumbbells, being on the ground, having to hold things, like anything. As soon as you put someone in that environment, grip strength will go up. And
yeah,
that to me is the number one key to improving grip strength is just including hand loaded things. But then, yeah, once you get to that point where guys have been doing that for a while and that's the way they've been training, then that's when the extension and different, you know, hand movements can really take off to the next level. Just because typically when you think hand loaded training stuff in the weight room, it is going to be a lot of flexion.
yeah. And while we're on the topic, is like all of our athletes have these little dinky phones, and they're hanging on to them all the time. Like they're always in flexion. Like
Yeah,
there's on top of that, you guys hold a bat and a ball and gloves and
all it is. Yeah.
yeah. So, anyways, we'll rap more about that, but we gotta come up with a little bit of a solution there. Um, it's I'm usually solving. It's leave it up to me to like solve things that aren't problems, but um, so something I haven't told you is I made it a goal at the beginning of the year to do 24 podcasts in the year 2024. And this appreciate you is my 24th podcast.
No way.
So
No.
this is like my last goal of my list of goals. I
That's
had like
awesome.
I don't have them all memorized. I won't pull up my phone, but it was like no alcohol for a year. It was which I'm good on. It was to do a 10-minute plank. Um, it's like take my wife on like a birthday trip. And it's like I did all these other things, but it's the 24th podcast. I was like, there's only there's only like like a dozen days left in the year, so I was like kind of sweating it. But I've been bothering you about it for a while, so it's when I say perfect timing, I mean perfect timing. Um,
That's awesome.
that being said, I appreciate you helping me out with my goal. Do you have any goals for yourself, whether it's professional or fitness, or what do you got going on?
Uh, yeah, I mean the biggest goal for me and our team is to win a world championship. That's my biggest goal ever since I've been here. With yeah, uh, personally, it's growing with my kids, my wife. How can we spend more quality time next year than we did this year? I think we did a good job this year of staying connected, even though sometimes we're not in the same spaces. But, how can we improve on that year after year? Because as my kids get older, it's more and more important to stay connected with them and to be able to, you know, have those relationships still, even though you're not seeing them face to face every single day. So those are my two biggest ones.
Yeah, nice. That's a those are good goals. Those are
Yeah.
good goals. And any books that you've read lately that you would recommend for us, or any persons like coaches or I don't know, podcasters, anything that you are, any material that you're taking in that you think coaches or athletes should maybe like give some attention to?
Book I've spent some time on this off season that's meant a lot to me and our staff is Unreasonable Hospitality. Great book. It's centered around, and I don't remember the author's name. I apologize. Will something. I forget his last name, but the book is centered around the restaurant industry. This guy is a restaurant manager of one of the best restaurants in the world, and he talks a lot about how hospitality is really the center of their business and what they do. And there's a lot of great lessons to take from that. And that's something we talk a lot about as a staff. It's stuff we're talking about right now as far as how can we become more hospitable with our coaching and the way that we interact with players, and how do we make it more of a welcoming environment and an environment that players really appreciate the work that we do. Not that we feel like we're lacking at that, but like how do we be better at that? How can we be the best at that is important for us.
Yeah, it's it is tempting sometimes because like I think our generation of coaches saw a lot of like gruff guys in the generation ahead of us. Um, it is tough, and the world has changed. You can't do and treat athletes like you could 30 years ago. Like there's just no way. Um, it is tempting sometimes to play like the tough guy, like hard nosed role or whatever. People just want to be treated well. They want to be treated really well. They need some tough love. They need some tough love sometimes, but they just want to be treated. Everybody just wants to be treated well. So I'm putting that book on the list for sure. Yeah, thank you for that. Um, nice. Um, and you've mentioned a couple of coaches to you mentioned Nelson, Chuck, Ian. So you've mentioned some coaches and now a book. So those are things for us to look into. Um, and then I call my podcast the Winning Wellness Podcast. So that can mean two things. One is that some people are not well enough to compete, and so they need to win their wellness. They need to get back to good. They're not in a good place. They need to get back to good. And then second of all, it's that maybe we are competing, maybe we are chasing goals, whether it's world championships or spending time with family or maybe losing like 20 pounds. Or what do you think is the number one thing that everybody needs to be well, or a common thing that's just not done enough, and you're not allowed to say consistency?
Mm, okay. Uh, oof. You get really good at the basics. Um, so if it's lifting, like can you get into shape safely? Do you know how to squat, hinge, push, pull, carry? Can you create tension? Can you turn it off? Can you rotate? If it's nutrition, are you crushing macronutrients appropriately? Are you crushing water? Is hydration there? The big blocks of each thing of whatever it is that you're trying to do uh, is just so important. Like, find out what the foundational things are of what it is that you want to get good at. So if it's body composition, it's probably going to be nutrition realm versus the weight room or vice versa, whatever it is that you're trying to do. But like, know what the foundational pieces are that go into whatever your goal is, and just focusing on those really, really well. which I guess
Yeah.
does go hand in hand with consistency. But
Yeah, but you didn't say consistency, so
yeah, but
so
it's one thing to say like, hey, you got to be consistent with something, but like being consistent in what? Like you want to make sure that it's the foundational things, the big rock things, and whatever it is that you're
yeah,
trying to get better at. Like
yeah.
that's the things to be consistent in. It's not the little oddball exercises that you're just going to do a couple times that aren't going to contribute to much of the process versus the big foundational pieces.
I love it. Well said. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
Hey,
absolutely.
hey, really appreciate your time. Great talk. Is there anything else that we can bring up, talk about?
I don't think so, unless
Okay.
you got anything.
If listeners want to check out your stuff, contact you, anything like that, do you have a platform that you prefer or you can offer to them?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram and Twitter. They're both the same handle. It's Road Strength. And then emails also roadstrength@gmail.com.
All right. Awesome, brother. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to our Winning Wellness podcast. If you have any questions or suggestions for podcast guests or topics, you can submit those through YouTube comments. You can message me on Instagram. My handle is Mitch Schwartzman, or you can email me at coachmitchschwartzman@gmail.com.